Hi everybody, my name is Gabby. Welcome to my YouTube channel. Today we're going to speak about something that is very passionate towards me. I have been really called to make this YouTube channel for a while, but I honestly just didn't think that anybody would listen or need to hear this, but I think that maybe they do. So today I really want to talk about the importance of knowing yourself. And I know that sounds very vague, but the thing is, we can know ourselves by the things that we do, the identities that we create for ourselves through, with our jobs, what our families say about us, what we say about ourselves, where we go, what we do, and where we hang out. But in fact, that is so surface. What we really need to know is who we really are outside of everything. And the reason why I thought I would make this video as my first video is truly just to give some insight on what it means to know yourself and how that can really help your life. I feel like if you know who you are, then no matter what happens, you will be able to stay grounded. You'll be able to move forward. You'll be able to get yourself through times of transition and change. And of course, we're all going to have that through life. Life is always changing. Our work is always changing. Everything's always changing. And if we don't have strong roots, we will also lose ourselves. So when I say know yourself, I mean who are you outside of what people would describe you as? Are you all of these aesthetics that we put on ourselves? Are you clean girl, Pilates girl? Are you someone who considers themselves a workaholic or a party girl, or all of those labels, right? And I feel like when we start to really, put those labels on ourselves, we find it harder to change because we've labeled ourselves as that. And in order for us to kind of create a new version, we have to remove those old labels. When in fact, nobody can really put a label on what we actually are, right? And so, yeah, I think that the first video I decided to make, it sounds, it might not be for everybody, but I really think that the first step to happiness and fulfillment is to truly find out who you are underneath all of these identities that we put on us. And that's for someone who maybe doesn't like the identities that they've been put on. Maybe you're not happy with your current situation, or you're not happy with your current life. I truly think because they're not forever, you can also use that knowing that you can make it better or change or evolve as well. The identities that we add on to ourselves are always interchangeable. One of my favorite books was Atomic Habits, which talks a lot about that. And it's amazing how, just through repetition, you can become a runner. You might identify not as a non-runner today, but after, 3 weeks of running, you might say you're a runner, which just shows how not solid those are, right? The fact that you can just change your identities so quickly shows that that's not foundational. Gigi, stop. This is my dog. So I think what I want to say today is, what can we do to really connect to ourselves, right? To really dig deep and find out who we are. And when I was trying to figure out, okay, how can I say this in a way that describe it without being too up and down, I guess. And what came to me was, okay, let's see, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 steps to getting there, right? And this is this is how I just was able to write it out. Let me know what you think. Okay. So to remove the identities and to see who we really are, we need to connect to our true selves, right? We need to make space for that. We need to have time. We're spending so much time connecting to everyone else. Even now, I'm connecting to you guys. This is not something I usually do, but now I want to not help you, but I want to share my experience, okay? So first, you need to spend time to connect to yourself. You need to create a relationship with yourself. And how do you do that? I mean, it's going to be the same as when you connect to a new friend or to a new, job experience, or whenever you're creating something new. But now you're going to do that for ourselves, right? And it's almost like not a common thing, to go to dinner by yourself, or, take yourself, to a movie, right? It kind of can feel weird. I remember the first time I ever spent alone time was when I had to go to Bali alone. And I had never spent time alone. I've always had my sisters with me, a boyfriend, or like my parents or something. And I basically got deported from a country because of some visa crazy stuff. And it was in that moment, the first day, I felt so weird being alone. I felt like I always needed like my phone on me, or like a book or something, but I had to eat by myself because nobody was there. And I think it took maybe like 48 hours for me to realize like, oh, okay, I'm actually not alone. I'm with me. Like, I have my own back. And it sounds really, really silly. Obviously, you need to be self-aware when you're by yourself in another country. But that was the first time I ever was like, oh, wow, like it's me and me, like we can do this. So that was my first time I ever, was overseas solo with not knowing one soul. And it actually was such a gift, because in the time of that, I felt like, oh, like this is really hard, or like I feel like a loser, like I'm by myself, like everyone has their partners with them, or like everyone is with, someone on holiday. But honestly, I look back at that time and I'm so grateful, because I was alone in a different country. It ended up being almost 6 weeks, and I was really able to start the connection with myself, right? I was able to be like, okay, what do I want to eat for dinner? Okay, this is how much money I have. How am I going to spend it today? Or this is, where do I want to, which hotel do I want to stay at? Like, it sounds very silly, but before that, if you're with a group or you're with your parents or friends, you're always going to be like, okay, like what should we do? Or like, what do you guys want to do? Or, what works best for the whole group. In this time and space, I was literally alone. So it was, oh my God, what does Gabby need? What is best for Gabby? How are we going to, navigate this situation? So yes, I look back at that time, and although it was forced and unplanned for, I was very grateful for that time I was alone. And I think that was the first start of my relationship with getting to know my inner guide. You know what I mean? Maybe not. Okay, so that's the first step. Second step is going to be being, right? We're just going to be. So we're going to like do things that help us connect, and then we need to just be. We have to make time for like the things to come to us. In that example I just gave, I was in another country. I had nothing to do. I was like literally, waiting for my paperwork to come through. So I had time to be, right? So in a really busy time and space, we're running around, we're going on our phones, we're like doing all these fun things, or we're just working a lot. We're really like outside of ourselves. We're like working and we're doing and we're having fun, or we're like dancing and we're doing these things, but we're actually not, being. And sometimes even when we're chilling, we're watching a movie, right? So I like to kind of use this example. My easiest thing to do, and which I've grown to love, is to go out for my morning walk, like as early as I can. I have dogs, so I take them out. And honestly, the first 10-20 minutes, sit down somewhere, sit in the sun, look at the sun, Try not to be on your phone. Just really just like sit there and be like, wow, like, you know, it's so pretty today, or maybe it's like really cold today or whatever. Like, and examine the weather, examine your surroundings. Like, just take it all in, you know? 20 minutes, 5 minutes if you have 3 minutes. You know, go out in nature, look at it, you know, or if you don't have anywhere to go outside, you know, just maybe like create a space in your home where you can just sit. If that's, you know, 60 seconds, make it count, you know, do some deep breaths. Like, just take a little bit of time for just you, right? One thing that I like to do as well, I like to meditate. I use guided meditations. Guided meditations were easier for me just because I felt like it really was helpful to have somebody guide me through the calming or like reconnecting, and that eventually leads to like more connection with my body, my mind, really calms me down. So I like to do that, and also just to be open to what comes, right? So we have connection through meditation, openness, and being outside, quiet, peace, nature. Give some space to be, right? I hope this is all making sense. I made a little bit of notes. All right, and then our next step, to remove our identities and see who we really, really are, we're going to just, it could be while we're doing these, being, sitting, chilling, making space, enjoying your coffee by yourself. It could be at the same time, or it can be at a later time. We're first going to ask ourselves. We're going to question. We're going to question all of those labels that we have. If someone says, you know, who are you? Or like, oh, what do you do? Or like, what do you think? What are the first 5 things that you start to say, right? And then just like question those. You know, if your friends, if this is really hard for you, ask your friends, how would you describe me? Like, give me 3 words, how would you describe me? And maybe they'll say, you know, 3 things that you agree with or maybe disagree with, but those are all questionable. You can sit down and question them. Do you agree with them? Do you really think that's who you are? Do you like that? Do you feel like, you know, that's where you want to be? The key is to just kind of like getting into who we are, right? Who other people say we are, and really questioning that. Like, do we agree? Is that sitting right with us? And the main thing here is just getting to know ourselves, right? That was the whole drive for this. And these are like little simple things that we can do to kind of like not just be going through life in just this like go, and then one day you wake up and you're like, oh my god, I don't even know if this is where I want to be, right? So these like ideas and steps are just kind of like building, you know, awareness around the fact of like who we are in the moment, who we really are, who do we want to be, is that changeable, is that fixable, do we like that, you know, and knowing that we can always change and we can always do that, but at the foundation of all this, who's underneath all of these interchangeable, movable things, right? Okay. The next thing, when you're questioning, obviously, we have to listen, right? And usually when you're listening, it needs to be peaceful, quiet. You need that space, right? Some people don't have that all the time, but if you have a commute, or if you have a few minutes in the morning, if you can wake up a few minutes earlier, and just sit in the stillness, you're asking yourself these things, and then you're gonna listen to see what comes up. Sometimes it's really obvious, sometimes it's a feeling, sometimes it's an emotion, and you're just gonna be like listening for that. Maybe it won't happen straight away, but eventually it will. Okay, next up, we're gonna interpret what comes up, right? We're gonna feel what comes up. How does it make us feel? We're gonna like, basically, yes, we're gonna interpret what those mean and how they make us feel, right? And these are just like very little simple steps. Does it make sense in our body when we say these things about ourselves, right? Next thing, evaluate, what does this mean for me? When someone says, oh yeah, she's so fun. She's like the life of the party. She's the best, right? Say that's someone that's put a label on you as being the life of the party, the fun girl, right? And say you describe yourself as that as well. Then you can be like, okay, well, is that who I want to be? Like, do I enjoy being that person? Does that make sense for my life? Like, am I truly that girl that I love and I want to be that girl, right? And all of this, again, is just to bring awareness to our identities that we have, the ones we put on ourselves, the fact that we can change it, and also to know deep down underneath there is something there, our true self, right? That is driving this whole thing, right? It's building awareness. Okay, last one. To just understand, what did I write down? Understand, comprehend. Hold on. Oh yes, sorry. Understand and comprehend the lessons, right? And what I think when I was writing that, I meant like, okay, for example, say the party girl situation. If someone gives you that title, you give yourself that title. What is the lesson there? If you want to change from there, I really hope this is making sense. Comprehend the lessons. Yes. Sorry, I'm in the moment. Yeah, I think just comprehend everything. What are they saying about us? What are the lessons in each of the identities that we give ourselves? What are we trying to get from these identities? What can each of these labels teach us? Where can we move from here? Where can we adjust? Or maybe we're happy where we are. Maybe we like all of these things. The key is to first find out our relationship with ourselves. Like, from here we can, make changes, build awareness around it. And then we're just going to repeat that. Honestly, just repeat that every day or as often as you can until you slowly connect and start to be like, I know who I am, or maybe I know this about myself, but I want to change this about myself, right? And then, so another thing I wrote was, why is it beneficial to know ourselves, right? When I ask myself this question, why is it beneficial to know myself and to know ourselves? I think, again, it's like I said, outside of everything in our life, outside of us, is always going to be changing, right? Maybe our location, our job, our relationships, maybe our dynamics, friendships, jobs, everything. It's always going to be changing. And if we don't have some sort of sense of foundation on who we are within that, we have more of a chance of literally being blown in the wind. Like, we can be the rock within all the interchangeable things, right? And it just makes it a little bit easier to navigate change. And sometimes people, don't really get to this stage until maybe later in their life, when they have to actually learn way later in life who they are, what they like, right? So I'm just thinking, hopefully this will find somebody when they're in a time of need, where they're in a time of transition, things feel uncertain. How can we find the certainty in our own selves, right? Instead of looking for things outside of ourselves to make us feel safe, that means the second that thing changes again, we're going to feel unsafe again. So what are some foundational ways that we can always find that inner guide and that inner strength and inner peace, that rock that will help us get through the transitions that is forever always going to happen? So it is beneficial. That was the reason I think it's so beneficial, right? No matter what. I've moved, 4 or 5 times to different cities in my life. And if I didn't have the foundation of knowing who I am, what I need, what makes me feel like myself, things like that, I honestly think it would be so much harder. Personally, the way that I connect to myself is through movement, right? And sometimes that changes. Sometimes that's, there's been years where I decided I really love doing weightlifting, right? It helped me find my inner strength. There's sometimes when I just liked, doing slower movements or Pilates. At the moment, I really am loving working out at home, doing, slower movements, more like connecting to my body movements, right? Maybe in 2 months, I'll be like, I really want to hit the gym and lift weights. And it's not about what do I want to look like. I think through commitment, of course, your body does change, but the reason I do it is so I can be in my own body. That's 20, 30, 40, 50 minutes of you and you hanging out. There's no one else there. You're listening, you're connecting, you're moving your body, right? Maybe you go for a run, maybe you go for a walk, And that is one way that I connect to me. If I don't do that, I definitely feel more reactive. Not, that sounds kind of crazy, but just more sensitive to your surroundings, right? So if you start your morning with like a 5-minute body awareness, like stretching or whatever you need to do to like get in your body, I truly think that really helps. A last little note that I wrote, let's see. I wrote that, the world can be very impressionable, right? We can take on identities left, right, and center. We can take on the identities of like our friendships. We can take identities of, someone we really look up to and literally like start to mirror them and become that person. And I truly think sometimes that's really good for inspiration. Sometimes that's so fun, but it also means it's temporary, because if that person's changes, that means like, oh, okay, well, now I have to change, or maybe you lost your inspo. And it's also a very a very soft version of an identity, right? So when you can get to know you, build a relationship with you, and you can see someone else and you can really love their life, you can be like, wow, that person's like amazing, like I want that for myself, that's amazing. You're never gonna feel jealous. You're never gonna feel like you're comparing yourself to them, because you're gonna be able to look at that and be like, well, I know what works for me. I like that about that person, but I'll be able to take 2% of that, add it to myself, add it to my little box of what works for me, not like totally losing yourself in like a new identity. So anyways, I hope that this makes sense, and I hope that this doesn't just feel like I'm just like word vomiting. But the reason why I created this again is just hopefully, I just felt like maybe somebody wanted to hear this, or maybe someone needed to hear it. I would have loved to have this information, 10 years ago when I was a little bit lost. So if it did help you, just give it a little like, so I can even know that somebody enjoyed this video. And if not, then that's fine. But I'm hoping that I'll make another video, whatever comes to me next, about, maybe along the same lines of maybe connecting ourselves, growing further in our own relationship, to fulfillment. How can we, really grow? And yes, if you like the video, like it, and see you in the next one.